present day. Why don't we take a look at Klay's new home, guys? Dallas, the Mavericks, they're actually tied for the second best odds to win the West with both the Timberwolves and the Nuggets. All of this is according to ESPN Bet. So that is what the odds makers are saying here. I want to play a little fill in the blank here, if we could, as Kendrick Perkins joins us here. Tim Bontemps with us as well. But Festus, since you're new here, I'm going to start with you.
Wow, going with the rookie first.
I'm going with the rookie
first. What's up, Big Perk?
We're teeing it up for you, right? The Mavs are the blank best team with Klay in the Western Conference.
Wow, okay. I will say the Mavs with Klay Thompson in the lineup are going to be the best team in the West.
Oh, so you're just saying remove the blank.
I'm just...
the best.
The best team in the West. And I know the Minnesota Timberwolves and OKC Thunder are going to have a lot to say about this as well. But I'd say you're replacing a little bit of defense with more shooting by adding Klay Thompson into the lineup. I've told you about what he brings on the court, but his chemistry and morale is going to be boosted because of this.
Perk, you're our veteran, so I got to turn to you. He says the best in the West.
Yeah, I'm not going to jump off the porch like that, but I will say they will probably be second, maybe third. But the best team in the West is going to be Oklahoma City, especially with getting Alex Caruso and Isaiah Hartenstein. I just have a problem with looking at the Dallas Mavericks and wondering who's going to guard that's out there. If they're going to start Klay Thompson, Kyrie Irving, and Luka, who are going to be their defenders to stop the other guys? Right? Yes, they're going to have all the offensive power. Is they going to sacrifice? That's another question that needs to be asked. And then again, it comes down to Luka as well, the most important piece. Is he going to come in a training camp in shape, and is he going to be able to sustain that level of conditioning throughout the playoffs? We saw in this last postseason that he kind of got back on the heavy side. Those injuries started to kick in. And when you make a deep finals run like the Mavs did this past season, you got to come back in better shape, ready for the longer haul.
Yeah, I mean, I think Perk touched on the two things that are important here. One, I think Oklahoma City, there's a bigger gap between them and the top of the West than there is between Boston and the top of the East. We look at the moves they made this summer, as good as they were last year, already being tied essentially with Denver and with Minnesota atop the West. Thunder are clearly, to me, the favorites to get out of the West. And then when you look at Dallas, yes, the Klay Thompson impact is going to be big on the offensive side. You have the three of those guys on the court. As you know, Fez better than anybody. He's going to give Kyrie and Luka a ton of space to operate. But I go back to the same problem you saw all last year with the Warriors. When they had Klay out there with Steph and with Brandon Podziemski, they didn't have enough size on the perimeter to really guard effectively. And if you're going to have Klay starting, which right now he's going to start, if you have him, Luka, and Kyrie out there, that's not exactly a lot of defensive firepower. So I'm very curious to see what that fit looks like. I think Dallas is going to be a top 4 team in the West. You look right now, to me, they're in a pretty clear group with Minnesota and Denver. But that fit with Klay in the starting lineup and how everything looks overall, very curious to see how it goes. I think it's the biggest question to determine just how high Dallas' ceiling is going to be.
Yeah, I agree with Perk and Tim. I'm not jumping off the porch that much yet, but I want to ask you a question because when we look at the Golden State Warriors, a lot of people underestimated y'all's defense. You had some really big fives, but then Draymond was called to switch on everybody. Do you see Dallas being able to put it together and making the most out of this offensive juggernaut offense?
You have to say, when you look at Dallas last year, one of the biggest shifts for them at the end of the season, where they went 16-2 to end the season, was adding Daniel Gafford and really Derek Lively's transformation. He just continues to evolve as a player. So I'm putting the onlyness of the defensive pressure on the big fellas, because now you're having more offense with Klay Thompson. And so the big fellas are just going to be able to eat more on the offensive end, and they'll be more inspired.
But you know how we do. We from the same culture. You know what they say, charity begins at home. You have to have defensive tones set by your leader, and that's Luka Doncic. Remember the year where everyone was talking about Steph Curry coming in, he's in shape, he bulked up because he wanted to show his team that he was committed. You were there literally calling the games, or maybe you were in between stages. Yeah, you were there. So now I think it's going to be interesting to see how Luka responds to set the tone for accountability, not being a liability on defense, on top of having one of the most potent offenses, Klay Thompson filling in a huge gap for them.
Well, and this was Luka's first taste of that specific stage. And so talking to Jason Kidd as it became clear that they weren't going to be able to defeat the Boston Celtics, he kind of said, well, maybe this is the moment. For some players, they need to play on that stage and feel what this feels like, be disappointed so they can build back up and know what the necessary requirements, exactly what you're talking about, that defensive prowess is. Well, Coach Tom Thibodeau, he spoke with NBA.com, saying in part, quote, "We'll look at different things because we have versatility. We could see Julius more at the 5. I think he can do it." All right, Interesting. Let's go to our big man. Big
Welcome
Perk.
to the paint, big fella.
Is Julius Randle the key, Perk, do you think, to the Knicks' success this season?
I do. I also think he's auditioning. And look, down here in the South, you know, when you go through some things and you're trying to figure it out, those old people used to always say your faith is going to get tested. Well, this season, Julius Randle, his faith is going to get tested. It's going to get tested because when you're sidelined and your team is having success, you're on the sideline, you're wondering, how can I come back and make this team better? Well, with them adding Mikal Bridges, them also getting OG Anunoby at the trade deadline last season, the best for this team is for Julius Randle to play the 5, especially in late game stretches. Is Julius Randle going to want to do that? How is his faith going to be in Tom Thibodeau that Tom Thibodeau is going to put him in the best position, not only for the team, but for him to be successful? We're talking about his contract. We saw him tweet out about his emotions when it came down to him not having his jersey in the stores right now. It seemed like
Which
he was,
they did.
you know,
they
pretty.
did, just not in this picture, but they did. Yeah.
You know what I mean? He feels some type of way, and he should. It should give him the motivation to come back and be the best version of Julius Randle. But for the Knicks, I think that's going to be at the 5 position.
Okay, so Big Perk, you're absolutely right. Yeah, faith does matter when it comes to situations like this. But with a guy like Julius Randle coming into a season after you watch your team be successful in the playoffs without you, you have a lot to prove, especially when it's a contract season. So for him, he's coming to the season knowing that he's going to be playing a new position. Playing the 5 is a thankless job. You have to sacrifice your body, you do things, setting screens. These are all things that don't show up in the stat sheet, and you have to do these while you're trying to make a point that I'm still the guy that I have been. I'm still that all-star. They're going to need him, and that chemistry for this team with Julius Randle is going to be what determines how far they go this season.
Look, I was of the same mindset, but a little bit more gentle because you guys know I'm half glass half full, right? Of Perk and Festus. And then, you know one thing, Perk, we know this, New York fans will humble you with some information. And I went in and crunched the numbers. The lineup of Jalen Brunson, Dante DiVincenzo, OG Anunoby, Julius Randle, and Isaiah Hartenstein, they were 9-1 in January. So with him in a big portion of that core, they have found success. Now the difference is when you have him playing the 4 versus the 5. Because in the NBA, you can play 4 around 1 and it's fine. In the WNBA, you can do the same thing. Like, that's just how basketball is. But now you're looking at, okay, will there be any liabilities if he is the tallest guy out there going up against the best in the East or the best in the West? Those are the question marks. Will he embrace, as you mentioned, Festus, that role? To me, there are more guys in the NBA that are going to have to deal with that. We talk about the New Orleans Pelicans and Zion Williamson potentially playing the 5. These are things that have to be embraced based off of situations, but I do believe he has earned his spot. He doesn't really have to audition. We know what he has done. The question is, can they make the most of what they have right now, which is the best roster that we've seen in a very long time.
They have depth. They have an embarrassment of riches. Isaiah Hartenstein's not on the team anymore, but at the end of the day, when you're talking about a guy who's good for 20 points a game, 9 boards a game, and he's pretty good at creating for others, and you're humming and hawing over whether or not he's going to play the 4 or the 5, we kind of expect him to close quite a few games this year at the 5, and they're going to say, who's our best lineup? And Julius Randle is part of that best lineup. But do you think that that's the biggest question mark for the Knicks here, Tim?
No, I mean, the biggest question is what are they going to do, Malika, with their entire roster, and specifically with Julius Randle going into the last year of his deal before he has a player option next summer, and what do they do at the center spot? They don't, you mentioned it, when Isaiah Hartenstein was on the court last year, the Knicks were an elite team. Mitchell Robinson was banged up a bunch last year, got hurt again in the playoffs. We'll see where he's at physically at the start of the season. They don't have anybody with any experience behind him to play, so you have to worry about his health. And then you got Julius going into the last year of his contract. Perk mentioned the stuff about him tweeting about the jerseys the other day. It's not, to me, a very dissimilar situation from the one Brandon Ingram is in New Orleans. Another guy who's in the last year of his deal. There's been talk about his fit long-term with the Pelicans. And for both of those guys, they come into the season, guys who've made all-star teams, guys who, in Julius's case, has made a couple of All-NBA teams. Terrific player. But if he's your full-time 5 at crunch time in games, not sure how it's going to go going up against Joel Embiid and Kristaps Porzingis and these other guys in the East.
Right, and to your point, Mitchell Robinson only played in 31 games last season, so his health is going to be something we need to monitor. But to your point about Julius's accolades, I think spending a little time with him on NBA Countdown, if you asked him, you're going to have to play the 5, but we're going to win a championship or we're going to be playing in the finals.
Whatever you have to do, sign me up.
Exactly.
Put me anywhere.
He's going to say, put me.
Breaking news into First Take this morning. ESPN senior NBA insider Adrien Wojnarowski has agreed to become the general manager of the men's basketball program at St. Bonaventure. He told ESPN Woj is a St. Bonaventure graduate and has a strong relationship with the program. Woj released a statement that read in part, "After all these years of reporting on everyone's team, I'm heading back to my own." Stephen A., obviously Woj, a friend of all of ours. This is absolutely shocking. I can't think more highly of any colleague here at ESPN. And all I can say before I kick it to you is obviously we know he had a big-time contract here at ESPN. He's the best of the best. And I know it's a daunting job here to be an insider. I hope this is a happiness move for him.
So do I. I've gotten to know Woj over the last couple of years working on NBA Countdown. He's the best in the business. He's the best in the business. Make no mistake about it. Nobody's more well-connected. Nobody's more respected. And to be around him and to just to be able to touch on a wealth of knowledge that he's had in all of his years covering the league, the contacts that he has, the inside information that he's had. He's led this place for quite a long time. As you well know, there are many, many occasions where we won't even go on the air and report something unless we hear from Woj first. He's meant that much to this place. He's a part of this institution, somebody that, just speaking on behalf of the whole NBA Countdown team and all of us who have worked with him over the last few years, he's the best in the business. He's absolutely exceptional, a high-end professional. He has my profound respect, and I just hope that this is a very, very happy move, and I anticipate that it is because we certainly didn't ask him to leave. I can assure you of that. This is something that he's doing of his own volition, so one would surmise that he's incredibly happy and comfortable with the decision that he's making, and if anybody deserves to be in a position to make this kind of information for the betterment of their quality of life, he would be that individual. He loves St. Bonaventure, make no mistake about it.
Sure does love those Bonnies. Yep.
He does.
But I'm happy for him,
Yeah.
But I'm sad for us as a network because
Absolutely.
it's a devastating loss for us to not have him.
100%.
Yeah, big loss. And obviously he loves the college basketball. He loves the Hurleys, wrote the great book on Bobby Sr.
Yeah.
He knows the Connecticut program basketball-wise like you wouldn't believe.
Hurley and
St. Bonnie. That St. Bonnie's crew, Mike Vaccaro, the New York Post is another one. There is Bob Lanier.
Yep.
There is a lot of loyalty to St. Bonnie's. Little old Olean, New York, middle of nowhere. They love St. Bonaventure. They should have had the 1 year they had the great year in Ford, and Lanier got hurt. Chris Ford, it's a famous play. Anyway, to make a long story short, it had to be a tremendous opportunity. He wasn't going to leave ESPN for something he didn't like.
Yeah.
So good for him. If he wanted to go to St. Bonnie's, I give him a lot of credit.
Absolutely, and I just want to say this lastly. Everyone who works in media works incredibly hard, right? A lot of different hours. The job never stops. But to be an insider is truly next level. So I'm not saying that being a GM it isn't much, but I hope for quality of life as well.
A lot of pressure being an insider.
This is a good move for him. We wish him all the best. He's a friend and much respect.